have added $3 trillion to the national debt. There's nothing Republican about that. As Republicans, we believed in balanced budgets. We believed in limited constitutional government. It's what we've been saying for years and years and years, but we're not doing a very good job. We're not very good stewards with the federal dollar. Look at the spending, $3 trillion. Well, now some want to just apologize to the Republican Party, say, oh, it's the war on terror, the war in Iraq is costing us money. But even that's not true. That's about $1 trillion of the $3 trillion. $2 trillion are domestic spending increases. The Republicans have spent money worse than the Democrats. We always criticize the Democrats for spending the money recklessly. And the Republicans, not only the Republicans spending it recklessly domestically, they spend it recklessly internationally. And we have to wake up. It isn't something, a balanced budget is not just sort of a number on a page that we want to balance these numbers because it's the right thing to do. A budget that has $500 billion deficits in a year that we've been having, it has repercussions. The repercussions you see at the supermarket with your price of milk, you see it at the gas pump with your gasoline, and you see it with what's happening in the housing crisis. I saw in the newspaper this morning that the median house price has declined for the first time since the Depression. It's also got to worry when my little brother calls me up at 9 o'clock last Tuesday night and says, I heard they're selling off the futures overseas. And my brother doesn't watch the stock market at all, but that makes me worry. It's like, my brother's now watching the stock market, And it is kind of worrisome times. You see the Federal Reserve intervene in the marketplace and do a 3/4 of a point drop in one day. Well, those are temporary fixes, but as my dad said on stage, we have to understand, and it's not that complicated, but we have to understand that when you make the interest rate artificially low, you spur a boom, and eventually there's a correction. We're going through a correction in the housing market now, and it may be a very, very severe and significant correction. But it could get even worse than that. For 20 years, we've exported our inflation. How do we export our inflation? We buy more goods than we export, so we pay for them with dollars, and we've been lucky. Those dollars have gone overseas, and we've even been doubly lucky, because in the old days, the central banks in Europe held gold as reserve. Now they hold dollars as reserve, and they have for about 10 to 15 years now. So we've been able to export our inflation. So we increase our money supply here, but it isn't chasing our goods. So we've had relatively low inflation here. But when those dollars come home, there will be big problems. There may be a complete loss of confidence in the dollar. Now, the only thing we have going for us is that everybody else is invested in it too. The Chinese are invested in it. The Japanese are invested in it. So they don't want the dollar to collapse. Nobody wants the dollar to collapse. But how long can a nation live beyond its means? Eventually there will be repercussions. Eventually there will be a correction. And it's become the #1 issue in our country right now, the economy. But the economy goes hand in hand. Balanced budgets go hand in hand with foreign policy. If we don't address foreign policy, we can't simply cut enough in domestic spending to balance our budget. We're spending $1 trillion a year on military spending. And people say, oh, how can a Republican complain about military spending? Well, we've always said you don't throw money at a problem. We say you don't throw money into Washington at a problem like education and say, we're going to fix it in Washington because of the inefficiencies of bureaucracy. But we should say the same about the military-industrial complex. We don't just throw good money after bad. It needs to be spent wisely. Right.